To emerge victorious from most challenging encounters in Dungeons and Dragons, mastering effective tactics is crucial. Hey everyone, I'm Heavy J, and we're going to discuss some of these tactics today on Fat Dragon Adventure. Fat Dragon Adventure is your go-to for all things Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games. Want to dive deeper? Subscribe now and consider joining our Patreon page to become a Dragon Rider. The first combat tactic you should become familiar with is understanding your battlefield. Hannibal, the great Carthaginian general, is often considered one of the greatest military commanders in history. And I think this is because he understood how to exploit the terrain to his advantage. And like Hannibal, you should try to quickly identify cover, difficult terrain, and verticality. Rules as written allows you to split your movement up after an attack. So you can literally move, attack, and move again. When continuing your move, look for cover. By doing this, you'll gain a significant bonus to your armor class. This tactic is particularly useful when conducting range attacks. You don't want to leave yourself exposed to return fire if you can help it. Also, don't forget if you're in a firefight, whether it be from arrows, crossbow bolts, or even magic spells, to hit the deck. All ranged attacks, either physical or magical, have a disadvantage against you if you're prone. This is often an overlooked tactic that is very useful. And I think by understanding the battlefield, you gain so many benefits, it's almost like having an extra person in your party. Now let's talk about synergy as a tactic. General Patton is often cited as one of the greatest proponents and practitioners of combined arms warfare. I think he was particularly adept at coordinating the simultaneous use of infantry, armor, and artillery to achieve overwhelming force and maneuverability on the battlefield. And I also think that the right party makeup can do the same thing for you guys. Session 0 is actually the perfect opportunity to ensure your party composition provides a balance of mixed roles. You should try to have a tank, a healer, and a strong damage dealer when you're planning your party. These roles can really complement each other effectively when they work together as a team. I think it's also important that during combat, you communicate and coordinate your actions with others. And while we're on the subject of coordination, don't spread out and attack multiple targets either. If possible, take one target out at a time and reduce the monster's action economy. By eliminating the monsters, it reduces the number of attacks the DM can bring to bear on you, and that's really the beauty of party synergy. Now let's talk a little bit about actual combat maneuvers. Alexander the Great is often considered one of the greatest military tacticians in history. So like him, you need to be aware that there's a lot more things to do than just stand there toe-to-toe and attack. You can do things like dash, disengage, dodge, ready the action, or whatever. And speak to your DM about some of the optional rules found in the Dungeon Master Guide too. Some of these optional rules really make for some interesting and dynamic combat encounters. For example, if your DM allows the optional flanking rule, then you should always look for an opportunity to flank your opponent. Flanking your opponent will grant you advantage on your attack rolls, which is huge. So coordinate with your party members to flank your enemies whenever possible if this is allowed. So another out-of-the-box combat maneuver you can attempt is to disarm your opponent. Now let's say that a monster has a powerful weapon or magic item that they're using against you and your party. Disarming them may be the only smart solution that you have. Now, while there are some class, subclass, and feat options that give you a way to disarm your opponent, there really is no general rule for trying to disarm someone. However, if you look in Chapter 9 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, they do have a bunch of optional rules on how a DM can customize gameplay, and one of those is the disarm tactic. The goal here, I think, with maneuverability is to be creative with your actions by keeping the monsters off balance. Alright guys, let's change gears a little bit and talk about enemy tactics and weaknesses. Sun Tzu was a Chinese military general, strategist, and philosopher. And he said, know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles you'll never be in peril. Sounds smart. As a player, you should take that to heart and study your foes. Learn your enemy's abilities, tactics, and weaknesses. This information can help you plan your strategy and exploit their vulnerabilities. I encourage you to work with your DM and find in-game ways to research the foes that you're up against. As a DM, I usually make NPCs, libraries, and clues available to my players so that they can learn about the evil in their world before they delve headfirst into it. And I do this because it makes for some really fun social interactions at the table. In fact, for all you DMs out there, I did an entire video on foreshadowing also, which would be immensely helpful to you in your game prep. I'll put a link down the doobly-doo for you guys. Now, if you find yourself in a bad situation, then maybe it's time to start thinking like Napoleon Bonaparte. He was a master at sizing up situations and acting decisively. Study your surrounding and start asking your DM questions when you find yourself in trouble. For example, are there flammable substances nearby, like oil for lamps? What about crumbling structures? Maybe you can topple something heavy onto your foe. Improvisation is really one of my favorite tactics, and it reminds me of the Quentin Tarantino movie Kill Bill. There's a scene in that movie when Uma Thurman is fighting Vivica Fox in her kitchen. The whole thing starts out, of course, as an unarmed combat, but quickly devolves into both of them using everything that isn't nailed down as a weapon. They get very creative with their environment and the use of everyday things that they find. I'll put a link down in the doobly-doo for you guys so you can check that out. The video is about 3 minutes long. It's also a really great movie. If you've never seen it, you should kind of check it out. Also, one last piece of advice. Your environment can be a double-edged weapon, so be mindful of the environmental hazards that can harm you and your party. Avoid standing in areas with poison gas and lava. I know that kind of goes without saying, but it's worth mentioning. Again, move around. Just standing toe-to-toe and fighting gets really boring really fast. Try to keep the battle fluid and don't remain in just one spot. I know personally as a DM, I usually find an environmental or tactical way to punish my players that just stand in one spot and fight. Also, why fight the enemies where you find them? Prepare a space with bear traps and lure them into it. That's always fun. Better yet, you can lure them down a narrow passageway where you can control their numbers, which is better than allowing them to move around you and flank you. This tactic will also allow your spellcasters to fire a lightning bolt straight down the passage and hit all of them while only using one spell slot. Smart, huh? The key to improvisation is that almost anything, including the terrain, can be used as a weapon to damage your enemies. By mastering these tactics and adapting them to your specific situation, you can increase your chances of success in combat and become a formidable force in your campaign setting. If you enjoyed this video, and you can support the channel by becoming a Dragon Rider, then please visit our Patreon page. The link is down the doobly-doo for you. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you never miss our next episode. Until then, ride that fat dragon. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Fat Dragon Adventure. Alexander the Great is often considered one of the greatest military tacticians in history. So like him, you need to be aware that there's a lot more things to do than just stand toe-to-toe. Oh my God. That's wrong.